I hear that beep in my ear, and guess who is coming on to tell? There he is to tell us what it was like in the courtroom. I am turning this show over to Michael Bryant.
It was something. I don't know where to start. Let me start with. I'm going to go backwards. I'm going to start backwards and work into some of the other moments. First of all, when they said, "Hey, we're going to leave early," I'm like, "Oh my God, it's too early." But I
early
get out
10 minutes.
Yeah, well, it was they kept saying we're going to 5:30, we're going to 5:30, and yet at 10 till 5, this is a good time to break. Oh, all right. So I'm out in the hallway, and Pat Sanford comes by. How you doing, sir? Yeah. And then I go over and approach him, and I'm basically schmoozing him about, my good buddy, Special Agent Michael Easter, just to see if he knows him. And, it's a big fraternity, but, he's on the West Coast, Michael Easter is. But you never know. It's, it's a conversation starter. So I said, you must be. He said, oh, is he retired? I said, yeah, because obviously I said, we have him on the show quite a bit. And I said, you must be getting close. And he said, yeah. I said, you got something lined up? Excuse me, as I bat away the various bugs and creatures that love flowering.
Okay. I've had fruit flies in here all day because I was eating bananas and coffee and all.
So he said, yeah. I'm looking. And I said, well, you guys, you've done a great job on this. I know you got a kind of a long day tomorrow. And he said, yeah. And I said, but it's the last one, right? It's the last trial. And all he said was, well, you'll see. So I'm not sure if he's just playing along with me or he honestly believes something else might happen. I was talking to somebody else who believes, and I'm not sure I'm buying in on this, but they believe that soon after this trial ends, Harvey's going to be arrested.
Yeah, that's what I see. I don't see them getting a conviction on Harvey. I really don't.
I'd be shocked, but hey, stranger things have happened, I suppose.
Yeah.
So what did you enjoy most about the afternoon session? Was it the bump?
Oh, I love the bump, and then and then not only the OC, not only the bump, because I was waiting for the bump, but then the tickling of the wire and the transcripts, right? Tickling of the wire and the transcripts. I mean, I'm like with bated breath. I'm like, oh, I've got to read them because I really couldn't hear well on the transcripts.
I posted that I don't think it really. I mean, they've got the screens right in front of them. They have the headphones. The jurors have every opportunity to do the best they can as it's flying by.
They've also got a highlighted transcript. Did you notice
that? I think is a problem. And
I think that's objectionable.
Actually, Miss Fulford did object.
Well, sort of.
Well, she did it on the record at the end saying, oops, I forgot to mention this at the sidebar. By the way, this thing, I've never seen one highlighted like this. Like it's been in this is the one that was on somebody's desk in their office, and then they submitted it. It's highly prejudicial, I think, but they're seeing it. And what I was posting about was that even if they can't keep up with what's happening in court, obviously they will have all of this stuff with them to go forward and back like the Zapruder film, when
except the transcript does not go into the jury room.
Again,
Michael Bryant, tell people that
the first time
the transcript doesn't go into the jury room.
Happen.
The transcript does not go into the jury room. Tell them that.
Yeah. Am I back? Am I gone?
Yeah, you can't. You can't hear me. Is something wrong with my mic, Mike?
I can hear you. I mean, you sound a little hollow, but I can hear you. Yeah.
I'm a little hollow. The transcripts do not go into the jury room, by the way.
Oh, is that what they said? I missed that.
No. Generally, transcripts don't go in.
Generally,
transcripts go in. Now, maybe in Florida it's differently, but
I think it's worth checking out. I think it's worth checking out just because it would not surprise me.
No, if something's different, right?
Yeah, every place is different, and it seems to me Florida, among other states, is as jury friendly as any place.
Right, it's true.
So we'll see, but I hope they do get them. And if they do, I would insist that it be a clean copy, not a highlighted copy.
Right.
So, yeah, and I think it did. I saw Dizzy's note. I think they did do it in the last trial, which is what was kind of rattling around in my head.
Okay.
So anyway, we see Oscar, or I see Oscar anyway, and I'm sure anybody who has listened to that bump recognized his voice. It just has a certain cadence and style. And like I said in my post, I said he's got a little more salt than pepper in his beard, but from the stature and his movement and his voice. Yeah, clearly the bumper. And I thought it was interesting when he said something about, I commented when we talked about this with Michael Easter. I said, I thought he was, when he said thank you at the end, it just seemed so out of character for a guy who's supposed to be a gang member, right? Thank you very much. Thank you. And so he was told to be polite. And I guess that's how he kind of interpreted that suggestion. It was interesting to see how little these people know, in terms of the big picture, right? That Oscar, Special Agent Oscar, wasn't really apprised of a lot of the lead up or where things were going. He had a very specific role, and they told him all he really needed just to complete that role and, throw the bump out there, and then whatever he would need. Remember, he even said on the subsequent email, the additional tickle through the email, they basically told him what to write.
Right.
So his role was very refined. I thought that was interesting. He wasn't kind of the part of the bigger team. He was a critical part of that very, nuanced and surgically placed bump, because it worked out great.
Yeah, no, it worked out pretty well, and the whole transcript where she called, they had scoped out that she would call Charlie first. They knew, and then they don't go to the police, right? And we haven't even seen Charlie. They're finally meeting, but we haven't even seen the phone calls after that meeting. It was really, so Dizzy said no, it was a Dolce Vita transcript. No, in most states transcripts don't go in. The transcript is there. The instruction is it's there to help them when they're first listening to it. But then the transcripts don't go in. But Florida may allow transcripts of a wire to go in. I don't know.
And now Dizzy is saying it was the Dolce Vita transcript, which I can see needing that because I'm not sure what the hell you can get out of that, even the enhanced version, which we haven't heard yet.
Right.
Unless they slipped that in on me when I was coming and going from that.
Yeah.
So that's gonna come. But yeah, I'm going to find out tomorrow for sure about the whole transcript thing, because I think in this case it's so important. I thought it was interesting on Cross.
But when Jackie Fulford at the very end said, and by the way, she's reading off these highlighted transcripts, that wasn't an objection to a highlighted transcript. It was the objection to her reading things in the middle of the transcript being played. She didn't say, Judge, this is showing what the prosecution believes. This is not argument. This must be evidence that goes in without having any type of bent to it or bias. And by the highlighting it, the prosecution is showing the bias to the juries to look at.
Yeah, you're right. She did kind of conflate those without making the point she should have separately. And I guess admitting she didn't make the same point at sidebar. Her position was, the counsel should not be able to basically just synthesize what we heard on the audio and allow the witness to say yes. You can't get more leading than that. But the judge is like, no, that's something they can certainly comment on in context, but I'm not going to address it any further. All right, there you go. If it's an appellate issue, knock yourself out. Speaking of Ms. Fulford, I thought it was bizarre and probably off-putting when she's talking to Oscar. And asking him.
Explain to me, but he's the OCU. I've been calling him the OCU. The
OCU?
UCO, the undercover operative. The UCO.
Undercover, yes, special agent undercover. She first of all, she was clarifying. You frightened her, right? And he said, "Well, I think she was startled. I don't think I frightened her."
That was a great distinction. That was a great distinction.
Yeah, and he was being nice. But then she goes on to say something I just think was somewhat odd to talk about his accent, because he mentions Tato and Tatu and TT and all of those guys, and she references, yeah, that's an interesting accent. Yeah, it's a Spanish accent, crazy. And she says, "Are you fluent?" He's like, I mean, have you looked at my last name, Jimenez? Do you think that's Irish? I mean, I
like the fact that Donna, who lives in Florida, says, "Oh, it was a white guy."
Yeah. And well, look at how he spoke. Very accent free. But when he, says a word that is native, it has more of an accent to it. I just thought that was just.
I'd love to have dinner with Oscar, with the OC, with the undercover operative, the UCO. I think he sounds like the most fascinating person.
And of course they didn't show him. I guess, right? They showed the seal or something.
No, they
which
showed
I
his
just
at one
I thought,
point they showed his tie, and at one point, just at one point, like this part of his waist. So they showed like this
well,
part of
that's
his waist,
weird.
right? Right,
And so
and it didn't even have a Justice Serve TV insignia on it.
oh well, we'll have to correct that. I'll see if I can get it to him through my new buddy, Mr. Sanford, Pat Sanford. So you're not seeing him, but the odd part is, I mean, obviously there's a difference between here he is appearing on the bump video and here he is appearing, bright and shiny on the witness stand. Could affect his undercover use down the road, but it just does seem a little fake when we know his name. We've seen him before. I don't know how protected he needs to be or is going to be, but they decided to handle it that way, and it was mercifully short, so it was fine. It was fine, and I do think just hearing the guy was kind of an interesting experiment, having seen the video, and now if you're just listening to the audio, you go, that's the dude, that's the guy.
Someone, Schreiber said on Court TV they showed his gray beard, but very interesting with regard to that. This is a long time ago, so he may have had a lot of other undercover operations since then that he really needs to be protected
no doubt,
from. That's all
no
different
doubt.
thing.
Yeah.
Right.
So it was 9 years ago that they did the bump. So
right. Long time.
everybody gets a lot of gray everywhere in 9 years. Let's see. I didn't have much on the surveillance guy who was a guy in the van, and then the guy who was stuck going to Dolce Vita, and then we have our engineer geek. You don't see sweater vests very often, but he was rocking the sweater vest to talk about the fact that he had to enhance the audio, and I do want to hear it. What I've heard, I don't know if it's enhanced or not. Whatever's been out there from the prior trial, I don't know if that's called enhanced or just barely acceptable. And as he admits, he could only really make out a small piece of a sentence. So what do you think about this in terms of practice and strategy? They've dangled all of these things in front of this jury, right? All of these videos, all of these phone calls, and they're just now beginning to get them. Is that a great idea, or do they feel frustrated when they hear about this piece of evidence and then, we're not going to get it until whenever they get it to us?
No, I think the jury is really involved. They're like waiting for the end of the movie.
So you think they're happier, or they're accepting that it's a tease that's coming later?
Right, okay. Right, and they're accepting, and now they're getting to it. And now they're really getting to the meat of it. What I want to know is who is after Sanford. Someone suggested the snitch, but you can't end a case on a snitch. I mean, maybe it's and Sanford
not unless you're really confident in the snitch.
Yeah, and Sanford's the one who apprehended her on the jetway, and so maybe you have to step him down, bring the person who she bought the tickets from, the conversation, blah 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 blah, and then bring whoever the final agent is, maybe not Sanford, but the final agent, the local agent, in to talk about the arrest on the jetway. Maybe that's the way they're going to do it. I'm not sure.
Could be. We do know, and I'm sure you picked this up as they were clearing for the day, that he's. As I mentioned to Mr. Sanford, Special Agent Sanford, he's on all day tomorrow. He's the day.
Right.
So that means whatever mop up they've got on their case in chief will come Friday morning.
Right.
And then, we'll see. Oh, somebody's asking how the secretary is. I mentioned, I think it was on a post. I don't know if I mentioned it on air when we talked. But today she brought in a massive pillow. And I speculated that, and she had it kind of propped behind her, not beneath her.
Well, I have a heated blanket propped behind me.
Well, they would not allow that. So I speculated that it was either because she might have some back issues, or she was anticipating another forensic accountant coming on the stand, and she wanted a pillow. But anyway, she was fine. I talked to, and I did an interview that's just been posted with Susan, who is with a channel called True Lifestyles and does true crime. There's a cadre of these streamers from this area that have been following this mess for the last 6+ years. So I did an interview with her and posted that. And she also has focused on the woman I'm calling the secretary as being somewhat of a ringleader. Maybe they're going to defer to her. She'll become the foreperson. I don't know. But it was interesting that somebody else, totally independent of my observations, thought the same thing about this woman. She's certainly the most active. She was the one. I don't know if you remember a moment during let me get his name here. The cell phone guy who was on yesterday, and he finished up today. Not Crockett. Crosby. No, what was his name?
Corbett.
Thank you. He was in the middle of his testimony, and he says, "You have a question." And so everybody looks over, and it's the secretary in the jury box, hand held high. Bathroom.
I have to tell you, I love this. First of all, I love that they're comfortable with this judge, and like, all right, hey teacher, I have to go to the bathroom,
Yeah, and it was about the time for a break anyway, but it was just funny.
Yeah, I had to go too, so I was happy.
It's the witness notifying the court that the jury has a question about, and we learned the bathroom. I didn't know what else it might be.
Oh, that was the witness who notified the court?
Yeah, that was our guy, Corbett. He was in there in the middle of an answer. I think it was on direct still, and Ms. Dugan asked a question, and he said, before he answered, we have a question, and we turned around just the secretary. Speaking of questions from the jury, that's very common in Florida. Very common.
Yeah.
But not happening here. And
why.
I'm guessing it's a court-to-court thing, and Judge Everett doesn't encourage it or allow it.
Yeah.
So.
By the way, Scott McGinnis is in a trial because we're staying with Adelson, but there's been another case that's been going on. Proctor.
Oh, yes. Day one of his hearing.
Yeah, and Proctor's attorneys actually got some traction pointing out the flaws in Proctor's firing and how the FBI investigated Proctor, not the MSP Internal Affairs. So it's an interesting angle. We'll see.
Yeah, well, I think what we're going to find out.
But that's great. Thank you, Scott. Thank you for telling us.
Yeah, Scott. Thanks for staying on top of that. I think what we're going to have. Here's my prediction. What we're going to find out is the corruption and protecting of the folks in the service there goes higher than we thought it ever did.
Well, what they're going to argue, what he's going to argue is that all this stuff was done by other people and no one got fired. I got fired, and therefore the penalty is disproportionate to what had been expected. So that's. And
they might also argue it procedurally it wasn't done properly, which may or may not open it up to further review. But he may. I think there's a 50-50 shot he gets his job back because of the nature of the corruption in Massachusetts.
Well, that's very interesting. So Scott's going to stay on that, Scott. So you could be our reporter about that as we're continuing. We're going to stay on Adelson and let us know what's happening with Proctor out there. And there was also a Cardi B civil case that's been going on. A lot happening on there, but we're going to stay with Adelson because we've been invested in this case for years. And your decision about 2 weeks ago to move your plane tickets from next week to this week turned out to be very terrific because you've gotten the whole trial.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to see probably 90% of the prosecution's case, which is great. All the key witnesses, so that's good. Worked out. Sometimes things work out.
Yeah.
Sometimes the bugs, they're not working out. Okay, let me see if I can get some points we chat about.
I'm on my vacation and I'm sitting here for 10 hours a day.
Boo-hoo. So some of the stuff that you get from these phone calls that is not really germane to the facts, but just so telling about the people. Like that first conversation where it's the audio only call where we have Donna Adelson calling Charlie, right?
Right.
And talking, they're talking about, how do we get to Wendy and pick her boyfriends for her, right?
And gosh, right. They were involved in her life.
I mean, come on, 37. And she's got, 2 kids. What guy is going to be, want to be saddled with all of that? Because Charlie is projecting. Because Charlie is just Mr. Fun Boy, Mr. Toys, right? He doesn't care.
That's even Katie Mann was. You got dozens of ex-girlfriends. You got hundreds. I think she said hundreds of ex-girlfriends, and that's what Rob said. He only cared about women. Yep. He cared about women, go-karts, and jet skis. So he's not going to do anything without Mama.
So he's the toy department, and he projects that on any other guy that might want to date his sister. And so he thinks that every guy is going to be shallow, like he is. Mm-hmm. I'm sure there are a few, especially in the South Florida area. I'm sure there's more, but not everybody, dude. Give guys some credit that they're not going to be in it just for the fun girl. What did he say? I want a girl for like when I go on a Friday. Hey, can you get off work early and we go go on a weekend trip somewhere?
Right.
I mean, he's kind of a stereotype. I'll tell you.
So let me ask you this. That shows how, and this goes to Scott's question here. If you're a newbie, Scott, well, I can't understand Wendy's not on trial. That's how much I know, because they need Wendy. They need Wendy with the use immunity to get to everybody else. She's got to set up everything, and so they give her use immunity, and she may be on trial. There's an 11-year process to go up this ladder here, and all. But what about the fact that they're all seem to be planning for Wendy without telling Wendy what they're planning, what kind of person she needs, and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, and it was interesting. I kind of look at this in the bigger, non-criminal realm, and I say, okay, are there moms that are very controlling of their daughters and take a heavy hand in choosing boyfriends and where they live and how they run their lives? Yeah, there are. And sometimes it's cultural, sometimes it's social, whatever. But having a mom that wants to run her daughter's life is not murder. Okay, you have to take that next leap to get to it. But it is very interesting to hear Charlie say, "I know how to talk to her. You're not going to get very far. She's going to say, stay out of my life. I'm the smart brother. I can do this."
Yeah, well, that kind of helps Wendy, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, yeah, because she can't do anything without somebody advising her, either mom or brother.
Yeah, but at the same time, it could hurt her. But I'll tell you what, Michael, for me, the nexus that you've been lacking was linked today. The tickle the wire, the bump and tickle the wire did it with Donna Adelson. All right. Because if you were being blackmailed, right, and you think something's wrong, you're going to the police, especially if the guy comes at you again. And because you're going to place you and say, Jesus, my son-in-law was murdered. He was assassinated in his garage. I've got 2 grandkids. Now these people are coming after me. I'm running right down to the local police station. She doesn't.
No. And of all of these phone calls, the first one was the one most publicized, and I've heard, I don't know how many times, but then there's the second and the third, and they're all within, I don't know, an hour, maybe, and Donna Adelson is trying to tell Charlie, shut the hell up. We're not going to talk about this. We'll do it in person. You come here tomorrow, I'll come there, whatever. But he keeps calling back and opening up this conversation about what this person did. Is it the IRS? Are you being sued? Who does it involve? I mean, he's an idiot. He just gives more and more information to the FBI that if he followed his own advice early on and listened to his mommy, they would have just said nothing and then, met when they met, hashed it out, and they would have been in much better shape. Now, would it have saved the day? I don't know. But you just sound like a fool to keep calling back and prodding more and more when mom's trying to say, shut up, we'll talk about this in person.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Well, this is the but at the same token, this assassination happened in 2014. We're in 2025, so one could argue that they've been very successful here, because even in 2016 they were still trying to investigate it, and then in 2025 they're just trying Donna Adelson. And they're just trying Charlie 2 years ago.
Yeah. There's an argument that they were maybe a little too plodding, but it worked. It worked. So far, they're even with a little hiccup with Catherine Magbadois, they're ultimately batting 1,000. They've gotten everybody they've gone after, and so I think the proffer
was interesting, right? Where we haven't talked about the proffer that Luis Rivera gave. That obviously they were looking for Katie Magbadois to do it because she would have been the woman, right? Taken in. But the proffer that he gave was that he knew about the shooting of the gas line. I don't understand why the FBI, if they had that car and searched it initially, and the police didn't find that to begin with, if you're looking for a murder and you have the murder car, you want to pull or one of the cars, but they didn't know about that car, so that was the issue. They didn't know about the car, and therefore, when he told them about it, and they go and find it, there it is. There was the gas line had been shot up, and then you had the fact that Markel had to be shot on that specific day because he was leaving the next day, and they didn't know that. And then the fact that you had the June trip, the first trip down to kill them, and they didn't know that. So that Luis Rivera gave them the 3 things they didn't know about, which really cemented his proffer, the deal.
Yeah, and I think it is interesting as to that first rental car. Track it down to a secondary sale, right? It looked like a AAA auto repair car or some rescue vehicle. It still has the bullet hole in the floor. I mean, what kind of deal is that? And it still has the just kind of shade tree mechanic repair to the gas line that was shot up. I just thought that
Well,
was
that's because the rental
bizarre.
company just sold them all
Of
off as
course,
they do,
they
and no one
they
looks.
they don't give a rip, and you know
Right.
but you know, it is ironic. It's a AAA vehicle that's going to help people who've broken down on the freeway. It's got bullet holes in it, or one hole. I know, just
Yes, I
odd,
guess
just
that was it.
weird.
That's why the police didn't know, couldn't go look for it before, because they didn't know that that car existed, because that had to do with the first hit that they didn't know didn't go. That it
Yeah.
was, you know, they called it off because Luis Rivera wouldn't shoot him in front of his kids.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep, I know Scott, who is great to be taking an interest in this, because it is a convoluted mess. And he's right. He's talking about. Let me just bring it up here. He's talking about the prime suspect being spouse or ex. But the fact is, they had done such a pretty good job of distancing themselves with the hitmen and with the former girlfriend that it wasn't. They were not immediately suspected, or at least not beyond the point they could be just a suspect. And it took a lot of putting the pieces together, which they ultimately did.
So the big question is, do they, if they convict Donna, which I think that it's more likely than not right now. Although right now she sits there, she's still presumed innocent. I'll say that in the court of law, unless and until the state satisfies their burden of proof and proves beyond a reasonable doubt. And you could have a jury that thinks that the nexus will not be made or is not made, and all. And I guess if she takes a stand, that'll be something.
That will, and it's been represented that she will. It's always subject to what the defense team and more importantly what Donna Adelson thinks is necessary when they put their case on, which I suspect will be beginning early next week. I don't know. It's going to be a show. We also don't know about Charlie because he's in the neighborhood, and he could just pop on and testify exactly as he did at his own trial, and try to sell that. We're the ones being extorted here story, right?
Yeah, we're the ones doing it. And somebody could buy it. You don't know.
All you need is one. I
I
don't think the secretary is buying it. I will count her out. Let's see what other notes I have.
Now, Harvey was taken out of the courtroom at some point when they were going to do the conversation. What tell us about that?
Yeah, in fact, that was a couple of rows here in front of me. And so I think I posted something about this. Before they brought in, this was the other undercover guy at the time who sidles up to Harvey and Charlie at the sushi place, right? He literally takes the only open seat, which is right next to him. So he thinks he's made eventually. But it was odd that Attorney Zellman came right over to him, then got up and escorted Harvey out of the courtroom. They had to pass this former cop, and Harvey in that little ante room that I've talked about before. They had to pass shoulder to shoulder, one coming into court, one heading out. But it seemed to me they didn't want him in the courtroom for that testimony for whatever reason. I don't think it was a coincidence.
Yeah, obviously.
I'm sure he hasn't seen him since that day.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I agree. Probably not. Let's see. Legal Minded Friends, Karen Cole. Did you see Wendy hug her dad when she left? ?
Yeah. Actually, I recall was it a kiss on the cheek or on the forehead or with some affection. Yeah.
She hadn't talked to her mom since 2023 November, so that was interesting. Scott makes the point that Wendy seems like the only smart, or somebody mom make the point that Wendy seems like the only smart one of the group. No, I think Donna's pretty smart and calculated.
Yeah, I think she's smart to the point of evil, is what I think.
Right.
So, and it was interesting at the end of the day, the jury obviously gets up to file out for their last walk, and they were looking at Donna maybe more than usual. I may be imagining that. They always kind of take a look around the room. In fact, when they come in, they always look at the gallery, almost like see how's our crowd today. Like you're performing on stage. How's the house? We have a full house today. They always checked out the crowd, but today I noticed they seem to be more interested in looking in her direction. And she looked back at them. That part you could see on TV. She looked back at the jurors as they were leaving. I detected sort of a little smile, not a grin, but sort of, mouth turned up just slightly in a smile. So I don't know what she's getting from them, what feedback she feels, but I get the feeling she knows how important it is that they like her on some level.
Yeah, some level that they like her, but I don't know. She didn't. Those transcripts, man. Holy moly! Okay.
Let's talk about
Uh,
some of the Charlie conversation, because I know the prosecution has attributed to some clever code. I'm
mhm.
not so sure I believe a lot of that. Maybe there's some of it in there, but there's a point at which he's talking about this is on his. Is this the third call? Um, the second call in that short period of time. He calls it at she calls him at 2:09, and then he calls back at 2:35, and he's saying, "Is it about not paying my Sun Pass?" I mean, this Sun Pass is the toll machine that they use in Florida.
Like Easy Pass up in the
It's
north.
basically it's an easy pass from the in the tri-state area. Uh, I don't. I've been traveling a lot. I know it's out there on some other level for other states, but Florida big with the Sun Pass, Easy Pass big in the tri-state, and it just seems like a weird thing for him to think might be the might be the problem. She's accosted on the street because he hasn't paid his Sun Pass.
I know.
Yeah,
Or is it the IRS?
Oh yeah.
The other thing,
Yeah.
the other thing was, is it the IRS?
Said that more than once, and then he said it's a bad Yelp review. Now, and that's what they suggested was some sort of code. The
Yeah.
whole about. I think he's serious, because he also mentioned that is it a patient? You know, just because a patient says something bad about you doesn't mean you're a bad dentist. That whole thing. I think he's serious about getting reviewed badly, and maybe because it's happened before, or sued, because I'm sure that's happened before. I mean, and I don't mean just because he's a bad dentist. I mean,
No, just
it's
because that
unlikely if
happens.
you're in the medical profession or dental profession, you're going to get sued. It just
If you're an
happens.
American, the likelihood is you're going to get sued.
Yes. Yes.
Oh.
So I'm not. I don't know. What do you think about this whole Yelp reference? Do you think that was code of some sort?
They said it was. They thought it was code, right? The
That's what they said.
Stanford said they thought it was code. You know, I didn't see it that way. I saw the whole transcript being one of like he's trying to find out by asking all these other things if it's really has to do with what he thinks it is. He's eliminating all these stuff. That
Yeah, all through his head, he's
that's
ticking
not
things
good.
off, and then he's calling back. What about this? How about that?
Yeah,
And he just
because he
won't
wants to
shut
know.
up.
He wants to know what happened to her. I mean, because
Yeah.
I think he knows that this was relating to the hit, right? He knows it, and he wants her to tell him. And the more she won't tell him, the more he knows that it's related to the hit. You know.
I'm getting that from everybody else too. Hey, Madera Beach caregiver, it's been a while. How you been? Hope everything's all right. I think it was his insecurity and probably history with having had bad Yelp reviews, which is weird because I don't generally go to Yelp for my medical or dental, recommendations, but some people must.
Yeah, somebody asked us about Enrique Delgado. I actually did post that on our Twitter account that they said blunt force trauma was the cause of death, but I didn't read the whole article, but I did post that, by the way.
What are we talking about now?
Enrique Delgado came up, Carl Sharkey, also in Massachusetts, that they posted the cause of his death was blunt force trauma. And that would happen in boxing. But I haven't read the whole article because I've been a little busy here.
Yeah. Yep. Okay.
Along with everyone who's written us, that initially today I was going to use this week of my vacation to get through all the cases that we want to go through. I know that there's people that have written us to help them, and we're going to do that. And it may have to be with the sideshow that we're going to run that we're pre-tape, calling The Hunt, as opposed to our live shows. Also, somebody wants us to cover Jose Baez's trial. Ironically enough, I did get an email from his office yesterday. So that's the one that I think
What
is.
is that one? When's that coming up?
I think that's supposed to be the end of September in Florida, but I'll have to check that out. I haven't had time to check that out either. So we have a lot going on. Plus, we have our own legal work. I mean, in case you haven't remembered.
Oh, yeah, that.
Like I have like clients. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got my period of hell, September 15, October 15, a lot of deadlines, but as usual, we'll work around it.
We'll work around it. I mean, when we don't have to be on the air all day, it's a little bit easier, especially if we can pre-tape a couple episodes.
And I wonder, as we're, kicking around as we come up on our 1-year anniversary and we're trying to figure out what works, what doesn't, what do people appreciate, what do they care about. I really don't know. I see other creators who do very well just with a synthesized show at the end of the day, right? I see others who do well with this, wall-to-wall coverage, as we used to call it. So I don't know. I'm not sure where we fit in the mix, to be honest with you. I know there are cases that come along where we feel like we should do this kind of coverage, but it seems to be more case specific than just, hey, let's do one every time we have a
Right. No,
trial.
I don't think we're going to do it. This has been a case that's been on your radar for a very long time, and we had said that we were going to cover this. We were going to actually prioritize this over Koberger, if this went, if you recall.
Yeah.
But this has been, we have filed all these cases from the original trial on when we were at Law and Crime, and so this has been on your radar to be down there, and the whole time,
Yeah,
So
and I'm glad the timing worked out, and I'm going to try and cozy up to Kappelman tomorrow, and I mean that in the most professional way, just to drop off a card and say, look, when the dust settles, love to hear from you.
Right.
I'd love to have both her and Ms. Dugan on. I think that would be
absolutely.
amazing.
Right, I love that, because then prosecutors do that after they finish trials. If they get a conviction, they go on there, and we'd love to do the one.
She was on something. Maybe you remember she appeared on something. It might have been, I don't know, it might have been Surviving the Survivor. It might have been Joel's show.
I don't remember.
But that was obviously before this case. So she was willing to go on and talk when this case was still pending. So anyway, we've exchanged knowing glances in and out of the courtroom. So I'm just going to officially make my request before I get out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We've been on this, and I think she and Ms. Dugan have done a wonderful job. Initially, when we were first covering this on Law and Crime, I think one of the early trials, I wasn't too sure about her. I think it was because it was the first case where Katie Magbenoit, all right, and I thought the attorneys did a good job with that, and I was like, oh, I'm not too sure about this, but she has, especially as she's going along. To me, this case seems like the strongest presentation of all the cases.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to work with, and I'm really waiting to see how she ties it up at the end, which is critical, because there are people that need to be, handheld, get them from point A to point B, and in this case to point C and D, before they can make the connections they need to get a conviction.
And remember, this is a 12-person jury.
It is.
Okay?
Yeah.
Usually in Florida, unless you're seeking the death penalty, it's only 6 people.
I know, very odd. Another oddity here.
Yeah, another oddity here. So, I don't, unless the defense has done a bang-up job picking a jury and it found the odd person out who hates the government. I don't think they've been thematic. I went through a whole thing with how they failed to cross-examine Corbett correctly, right? And they could have done it in 10 minutes, and the whole thing of how you would do it. And I just, not to make their points and to be thematic. And I just, they had some good points, but they're getting, to me, Michael, I don't know, maybe I'm being too critical. They're getting lost in the presentation by the defense.
Well, here's part of the reason I think that's true. Remember, coming into this, based on the pretrial motions, I assumed Zellman was far and away lead counsel. By that, I mean that Jackie Fulfer was going to do lesser witnesses, and well, boom, she comes out doing the opening. She's handled as many important witnesses as he has, and frankly, I think maybe on balance done a better job. Not perfect, but I think a little better. And so I think they're deferring too much to one another. You'll notice with every witness when he or she are doing cross-exam, they say, just a moment, Your Honor, and they go back and they confer with whomever is not doing the examination before they let the witness go. So
that's actually good practice. We do that.
It is in general. I get that, but I see it here almost as if there's no leader. That's what I'm getting.
No leader. Okay, you're right.
They're truly co-counsel, and I think that can cause problems when it comes to strategy, when it comes to the presentation, and I just sense a little of that because they have those halting moments.
Yeah, very halting. In the presentation, just very halting, and therefore you're losing the theme of the cross-examination, which has had some good points. But if you had to go back and look at it, I have to really go back and look at it instead of saying, "Oh yeah, this is how I'm feeling," because jurors decide by feel a lot of times too.
Sure.
They've got to feel as to how they're. What's going on. And so I'm going to ask you, as I asked you as we close the show tonight, do you think that nexus has been met with Donna Adelson?
I think we're 90% there now. I think most out is gone, in my opinion. I'd like to see just a little bit more, which I think is coming when we see the rest or hear the rest of the phone conversations, and we're going to see those charts again, I'm sure, with maybe different numbers on them in terms of connecting these different co-conspirators. I think they've done a great job. Remember, the prosecution's case is never as strong as it is when they rest, right?
Right, strongest time.
It better be, you better be ready to go and convict, because otherwise it's it's an acquittal. I wanted to put that question up, which
I'm sorry. Did I just take it down?
I didn't get around to it, but it was a question. Oh, there it is. Let me bring it back up. How does Wendy look in person? Does she look how she does on the TV, or is the TV kind to people's true looks? No, I think she's attractive. Of course, I've been blamed about like somehow I'm favoring her, or somehow.
No, you are favoring her. You criticized her dress.
Well, it's different. But I've said many times I think she's an attractive woman.
Typical man.
And I think that she comes off on in person. She's taller. She had on her espadrilles. Did I pronounce that right? Espadrilles. Right. They're kind of a relatively low heel, right?
Right, a wedge.
Yeah, a wedge. Because I was wondering from that one picture we saw the day she didn't testify. Look at that; those are strappy shoes, maybe a little too spiky, a little too inappropriate for the court. But she wore very appropriate shoes, and the dress when she got up did hang, as you suggested, fine. And she did wear the same outfit, and as women would say, you can't be wasting an outfit. She just sat there in the hallway with that outfit. She got to come back the next day, rocking it for the jury.
Yeah.
My experience with her outside of the courtroom was not pleasant, so I'm not gauging her on that, because I was rude enough to ask her to sign her book as she toddled off with her team. I've mentioned that before, and she was abrupt and not friendly at the least. So I think she's putting it on for the jury. I probably saw the other end of the spectrum. I cannot judge her entirely by that one little interaction.
Okay. All right. So 90% there in your mind with Donna Adelson. I think that, I think the bump to me did it maybe because we know it was coming, and we know the transcripts. But I'd be waiting with bated breath for Sanford, because remember, this is, like Easter said, this was his show. He would have picked the UCO. He would have had the transcripts. He would have known what to say. This was his show at this point. And so, and I think he's doing a great job on the stand.
Yeah, and he super friendly. He was, I try not to, especially when somebody's in the midst of their testimony. I don't know. I could be, threatened with witness intimidation. But
only in Massachusetts.
Yeah, only in Massachusetts. But he was very friendly, chatty, and we stayed away from anything, specific to the case, other than, do you think this is going to be the last one? And he teased me on that. Who knows? Who knows? I think if he retires before the next person's arrested, he retires, then I think it's over. And he could always come back as the retired FBI specialist, as so many of them seem to do. In fact, I think it's almost unusual that he's still working. We get so many of these FBI guys that are retired. In this case, we've had a lot of them still in the field.
Right. And, he may want to see this case all the way through, if indeed all the way through is the arrest of another Adelson family member. And look, maybe they want to put the pressure on Dad. Maybe if Donna gets convicted and he's 81, he doesn't have anyone to fall back with. Maybe they put the pressure on him. We'll give you immunity, but we want to know what happened.
Boy, that would mean he'd have to, roll over on his daughter.
Mm-hmm. That's hard. Wow. That's impossible.
I mean, especially assume that his wife gets convicted.
Right.
His son's already convicted.
Right.
The other son is estranged as the black sheep of the family. Are you going to turn in your last kid?
I don't think so.
I don't either. So the question, I think, because I've heard more about Harvey in this case than in any of the others, and it just makes me wonder: do they have a plan for the guy? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. Maybe they go to Wendy and to say, hey,
roll over on your dad. Wow.
Well, arrest her and say, you can tell us the truth, and we'll part of the deal will be we want to indict your dad. I mean, that's the other alternative.
Okay, I got you.
Well,
there's a reason I call it as the Adelsons turn on one another.
It is
unlike anything I've ever seen before.